Hi, welcome. My name is Emily Larson, and I am from the Springville Museum of Art. And today we are here with Amanda Smith, who is a professional ceramic artist living in Utah. And this is part of the Artist to Artist program where we connect artists with high school students and teachers. So, Amanda, do you want to take a minute and just introduce yourself and your work?
Sure. Thanks for asking me to come to Artist because I love what you guys are doing here. Yes, so I accidentally happened into the field of ceramics a long time ago, and I have been doing it ever since. And I make, you can see one of my pieces back here, but they are flat kind of paintings with kind of ceramic sculptural elements and glaze and a combination of paint and glaze. And so I've just been making and exhibiting ceramics for like, oh gosh, like the past 15 years. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I love it. It's a hard medium, but it's also super rewarding. So
Yeah, and your stuff is so interesting and beautiful and intricate and thought provoking. So I'm excited for us to talk about it more. Why did you choose to be an artist, and where did your interest in art begin?
it was funny because when I was reading that question, I'm like, how could I not have thought about this before? But I don't really know the answer to that because I feel like it's just something like I always liked to draw as a kid. But I feel like it was more of an accident that I chose to be an artist. Nobody in my family, I come from a long line of farmers in Ohio and just rural people. Nobody in my family went to college. And here I am, like the first person in my family to get a college degree and a master's degree, and it's in ceramics. I mean, people were like, I didn't even know you could get a master's degree in that. So it was just like I was a psychology major. I still have a real interest in that. And then I was a tech major because it was like the early 2000s. And I thought, oh, tech. But I just, yeah, I feel like everybody goes into college and is going to change their major a few times. But I have this, I was actually compelled to take a ceramics elective. And I took this class and I had this really influential professor, John Balistreri, and he hosted this amazing workshop of probably 20 of the world's leading ceramic artists the year that I was taking ceramics one at Bowling Green State University. And so I got to see all of these people at work and it was amazing and see what this medium could do. And then I changed my major. So that's kind of it. I don't know.
That's so cool, and what like a happy coincidence that that all came together. And what a monumental moment to be exposed to all of that really
It
high
really was,
level
and
ceramics.
it was actually like a very historical workshop in the ceramic world at large because um one of the artists there, he was an abstract expressionist ceramicist and probably the most famous contemporary ceramicist, Peter Volkos. He was at the workshop demoing and he passed away during the workshop. And when all of the artists left to go to his wake, they left behind all of their supplies and their underglazes. And we as students were able to like kind of take them and experiment and like practice with the techniques and it was just really I don't know, I don't know if it was really like a wise decision, but it kind of was an impulsive I'm going to change my major decision. So
Yeah. No, I think I'm glad it worked out that way because your work is so great and I'm glad it's in the world. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think for the students who are listening too, that that might not happen when you're in school. You might not have a group of the leading artists in your field, but there is always people to learn from and be inspired from. And as you keep your mind open, I think to be influenced by things like that, it's always good to kind of learn from the experts that you're exposed to.
Yeah, for sure.
Amanda, what inspires you in your art? How do you get inspiration for new pieces and making your compositions and your designs?
Yeah, well, I feel like there are different components to that because I feel like there's like aesthetic inspiration, which I get ironically from very, very old art. I'm a big fan of like Mughal and Persian miniature painting. And I feel like those have been a major source of inspiration for my work. But at the same time, I get a lot of inspiration um, from the news and from just current events and just like questions I have, like what's going on, why do people think like this, why is this happening, or they're really I feel like my narratives are just big question marks, like why is it like this or whatever. I they're more just like an kind of an exploration of uh the workings of humanity, I guess. I don't know, that's a really bad way of putting it, but just I'm interested in like sociology and political events and current events and social hierarchies and things like that. So
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think it's a good way to describe it and a good thing for art to do, kind of explore the human condition and what's going on. Do you have a specific example maybe of a piece that was inspired by something in the news or in current events that you then translated into this kind of question mark as you described it?
I will show you the diptych I'm working on right now. It's my new piece. It's not done, but I will see if I can get it. So this piece has been very much inspired by living in a state where there's a lot of COVID deniers, and I have two medically high risk children. So I've been very shut in, and I feel like my life has kind of collapsed in on itself a little bit during this pandemic. And so that's what inspired this piece. I don't know if you can see, but she's in the house and with her issues, I guess. And then meanwhile out the window is, this is what I feel like Utah is right now, like a barbecue, a party kind of thing going on. And so the way I work is I will paint things in underglaze and mask them and then glaze around them and fire them a couple of times. And then the parts that I masked out, I will go back into with oil paint later. And I can show you a finished example. So this is what they look like when they're done. So then they're both paint and glaze. And so this is a piece about Bigfoot. So it's like the Mormon myth of him being Cain. So anyway, so those are some pieces that I'm working on and some of the ideas I've been working with lately. COVID has been a real low-hanging fruit for like inspiration because it's been such a dramatic effect on my life, and it's pretty easy to work with. So
Well, I wouldn't call it low hanging fruit, but I think it's very applicable. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And your style is so unique in your process. How did you choose that specific medium and style to work in? I know you kind of talked already about being exposed to ceramics at Bowling State, but how did you kind of work into this, like making these kind of ceramic reliefs that incorporate painting and glaze? And then how long did it find for you to kind of find that niche for your art?
yeah, That's a good question. So I feel like before graduate school, I kind of thought was still in the line of thought that ceramics was either for sculpture or for pottery. And so you could paint on sculpture or pottery, but you couldn't really do paintings with ceramics. And so I was working on these little pots because I wasn't a very good thrower. So I couldn't throw very large. So just like, and when I went to graduate school at San Jose State University in California, and when I started working, I'm like, this is really limiting, just the size of this piece to work on. And I'm like, I really don't have any attachment to the utilitarian, you know, ability of making pottery, just pottery. It just, I was doing it because I felt like that's what you do. um, so I actually started to branch out and I made these little tiles. And then I made it a little bigger. And then somebody who had worked in June Kaneko's studio, he makes like really large tiles. He showed me how to pound out the clay into these larger pieces. And with the mentorship that I got at San Jose State, they kind of like helped coach me through this process. And it was a lot of trial and error. I blew up my entire BFA show in a kiln the night before I was to hang it. So it's like, yeah, ceramics is like that. And you have to be like, do I want to keep doing this or not? Like, am I going to try and like force myself through the learning curve of this medium, or am I going to just quit? And I feel like I kept going, not because I was like really confident, but because I didn't know what else to do at that point. So I made a second BFA show when I was in grad school, and I was allowed to exhibit it later. But anyway, so yeah, I started working more on tile in this relief and sprigging kind of, I just kind of like came up with that in grad school, I guess. And yeah.
Yeah. Man, yeah, ceramics, what a tough medium
Yeah.
it can be. I can't even imagine losing your whole BFA show, but a good lesson to all the students who are listening to kind of learn from those mistakes. And even with mediums that are more forgiving, you'll run into things that probably are unrecoverable, and
Totally.
figuring
Absolutely.
figuring out how to move forward is part of being an artist and figuring that out.
Yep. That's right.
Um, And Amanda, what has been your career path with art? How did you decide kind of which career path to pursue and how to pursue art on a professional level?
Well, so that's another thing that I kind of just happened into. I feel like a lot of the things that I have like very solid goals for in my life just fall apart or don't really work out. But then things just accidentally line up and kind of create your life path when you weren't even planning it. So um, when I was still in graduate school, a gallerist in San Francisco reached out to me and gave me a show before I even graduated. And it was a solo show. And so from there, I kind of just started exhibiting in galleries and museums and in doing that. But the thing to know about that, because my husband and I both did that really, pretty widely. And the thing is that even if you sell work, you're not going to pay the bills with that unless you're like a blue chip artist, and which is like 1% of artists that can actually. So I decided to go into teaching, which I also actually happened into. There's an email sent out to alumni from San Jose State saying, hey, we have this position open at Irvington High School, and you don't have to have a teaching credential. You can get that while you work, and if you want to apply. So I applied and I got the job, and they gave it to me during the interview. And then I taught high school, like off the top of it was really, I didn't have a credential. I didn't know exactly what I was doing for a while. So I was going to school to get my teaching credential while I was teaching high school. And anyway, that's kind of the end of it. I didn't do that very long because I had kids and ended up deciding to stay home with them and work on my studio practice and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how that happened.
That's so cool. I didn't know that you had experience teaching high school, and
Yeah,
so
I love high schoolers, by the way. Just they're great. Just
they
so
are
you know.
great. Yeah, I'm sure they're happy to hear that. See, someone who appreciates you, loves you. Um, we kind of talked about what your artistic process is, but sometimes uh, the students like to know, how long does it take you to finish a typical piece?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I feel like it would be very different if I was a painter or a drawer because everything you put down is immediate. But like with ceramics, I have to fire my pieces at least 2 or 3 times before they're done. And each firing takes, 24 hours. So I will make something from bisque and then it takes me a while to glaze it, and then I have to fire it and then cool it and then probably glaze it again and fire it and cool it and then paint it. So I'll show you this piece, for example. It's kind of just something I'm messing around with, but it's you can see I have to, oops, there you go. That fell off there. This is ceramics for you, for real. But I just like, they're greenware and you can't really tell at all what color this is going to be until it's done. So I feel like I'm kind of shooting in the dark with a lot of this stuff, but it takes about, I mean, if I had more time in my studio, it would probably take less time, but it takes about a month for me to make something.
So, Amanda, we've talked a lot about like ceramics being kind of a tricky medium that can be prone to things blowing up in the kiln or things falling off, like what just happened.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or tricks or techniques for the students working in ceramics to help them avoid some of those problems or work through them?
I would say experiment with what you're comfortable with first. So if you're making pottery, experiment in your pottery until you get to a place where you're comfortable branching onto something else. If you want to make your pottery more sculptural or cut it apart and facet it, or slip cast molds and attach it, or whatever you want to do, I'd say get to a place where you're technically comfortable with what you're doing before you try and jump off conceptually and tackle something that will ruin your work.
I think that's good advice. And that's good advice for almost any medium, is to kind of
Yeah.
master where you're at and experiment there and then kind of move forward slowly.
Yeah.
Great. Um, what is your favorite piece of artwork that you've ever created and why?
Um so I don't know. It's kind of a toss up. I have two favorite pieces that I've ever made. One is called Dance, and it was bought by the Columbus Convention Center in Columbus, Ohio, and it's there. But it's kind of like all of these girls dancing with the demon, and it's kind of like a breakthrough piece for me in that just learning to live with my demons. And so I think that that's one of my favorites. And also last year I made a piece called Dragon, and it was kind of just about, man, about my rage at the moment, with things in my personal life and things that were going on politically and in the news, and just worldwide. And it was just a really cathartic piece to make. It helped me through a very hard year, and it will kind of always be, it was a way that I learned that art could be also just a therapy technique for me too. It's really soothing to make. And so I would say those two.
This is something that high school students and I think most artists struggle with, but how did you learn to have confidence in your work and stop comparing to other artists or overcome imposter syndrome?
Just pretend like nobody's going to see it if you are nervous about it. And then, you know, I remember even as a little kid, I had this sketchbook and I would never let even my mom look at it. Nobody's allowed to look at it. It was, it was just my drawings, but I was so insecure about them. So I feel like my MO has always been to make art like nobody's ever going to see it. If you feel you know, less confident about it. And then get over that in order to make a career and put it out there.
Like it's vulnerable to put your art out into the world, whether you're a student or a professional
It
artist.
is. It is vulnerable. It is definitely an act of bravery. And that so that Brene Brown book,
Sharing greatly or
yes, Daring Greatly. Whenever the introduction of that book where she talks about the boxer out there, that's what I think of with making work. You're daring greatly every time you make a piece. You're daring greatly every time you are letting somebody look at it or see it. I mean, it takes an immense amount of vulnerability on your part.
who is your favorite artist, Amanda, or who are artists that are inspiring you right now?
Yeah, I a lot. There's a lot. And so that question is hard to narrow down. Like I said, I like a lot of really old art too. I love really, really old miniature painting in particular, but um I have an Instagram full of artist accounts that I look at. And one that I really like right now, because of her vulnerability, is Tara Booth. I think that her work is really fantastic and really accessible and relatable. And I really relate to her work. So she'd be one of my favorites right now.
Yeah, her stuff is great. I follow her on Instagram too, and it's those things where like, man, just it just captures that very relatable experience and
Yeah.
kind of genius in its simplicity or
Yes.
accessibility. Um, what did you wish you knew about making art when you were in high school?
This is a really good question for high school students. One of the things I wish I'd known is that you don't have to be a technical master of anything. You don't have to be able to draw photorealistically or be able to throw a perfect pot. It's more about the ideas, and continuing with those ideas until you get a mastery of the medium. That'll always come later. You can always make progress in that area. But I think that what's really important are your ideas as an artist. So, which also evolve, especially from high school.
Yeah, but I think that's a great point, and especially connecting to our conversation about confidence is sometimes that lack of technical skill can really be a hindrance to having confidence and putting your work out there.
Yeah, for
But you
sure.
have to. It kind of comes as you make it and put yourself out there. Then you'll get better with those technical skills, and focusing on ideas is great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have any other advice for high schoolers as they continue to make art or pursue careers in the arts?
Yeah. So one of the things that I would say is that there are some really rewarding art careers. And really like doing what you love is really a wonderful way to spend your time. But just I would say just make sure that you go into a field that's marketable, maybe. Like maybe you really like to draw, maybe do some animation, graphic design, learn um, I have a friend who's a game designer, like just a field that where you can take what you love to do and make it marketable and be able to monetize that. And then also if you want to have a studio practice on the side or whatever, but I would say it's very rare that can be your day job.
Yeah, it's I think for most creatives, they kind of have to have a portfolio of things that are bringing them income in, and that might be
Yeah.
teaching or a studio
Right.
practice or contract work. But
Right.
figuring out what are all those parts of your creative hustles to make
Yeah.
all that ends meet.
Yep.
Advice.
Smart.
And
You said
who
it
knows?
better than me.
No, no, not at all. But I think that's very good, very practical advice. There are careers to be had in the arts, but think
Yeah.
about the practicalities of it as well as you dream and follow those dreams. So
Yep.
it's been so great to talk with you. We'll link your Instagram and website and things in the
Thank you,
description,
Emily.
and
Yep.
I'm sure the students will love to hear what you said.